Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Suja direction where the Ukrainians continue their offensive operation. I'll remind you that yesterday on the 6th of February of 2025, the Ukrainians launched a full-scale offensive operation with the purpose to take under control several settlements. The Ukrainians were planning yesterday to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Cherkasskaya Konopelka. The Ukrainians were planning to break through the Russians' defense belt and to enter the settlement of Ulakli, and the Ukrainians were planning to take under control small settlement by the name of Fanseevka. As for the morning of the 7th of February 2025, we know for sure that as a result of offensive operation that took place yesterday, most likely the Ukrainians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Fanseevka. So this is a very small village, and I'm not sure whether there were Russian soldiers when the Ukrainians were attacking. When talking about the Russians and their official statements, they reported this morning on the 7th of February of 2025 that every single attack that was carried out by the Ukrainians yesterday on the 6th of February was repelled by the Russians. The Ukrainians suffered significant losses. The Russians destroyed almost every single vehicle that the Ukrainians were using in that offensive operation, and now the main thing that the Russians are doing right now, they're attacking and hunting Ukrainian soldiers that landed in this area. For example, in this video, right in this episode, we can see how the Ukrainian vehicles, this is less one vehicle, 2, 3, 4 Ukrainian vehicles were moving along the village of Fanseevka. So this episode took place exactly in this point, and based on this video we have adjusted the map in Ukrainian favor. Now let's take a look at how the map was changing since the beginning of the offensive operation. For example, this is the map that you can see right now in front of your screens, is the situation in the Suja direction by the end of the 5th of February, right before the Ukrainians began their offensive operation. And for example, this is the situation that took place by the end of the 6th of February. I'll remind you once again that Ukrainians managed to break through the Russian defense belt to encircle a small town by the name of Cherkasskaya Konopelka, and there were several videos that shown us the additional progress on the ground in the direction of the settlement of Ulanek. And during the night we received additional information. We got lots of additional map updates from different mappers, and right now this is the map that you can see in front of your screens, is the situation by the beginning of the 7th of February. Once again, the Ukrainians most likely managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Fanseevka despite the report of the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation. According to different mappers, the Ukrainians managed to establish complete control over the tree line that goes between Fanseevka and the settlement of Ulakli. This is, by the way, a perfect defense belt that Ukrainians can use in the future to repel possible Russian counterattacks. And according to different mappers, the Ukrainians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Cherkasskaya Konopelka. But as for this tree line and as for this settlement of Cherkasskaya Konopelka, we still haven't received even a single confirmation that Ukrainians managed to do this. One thing we know for sure, and one confirmation we have for sure, that Ukrainians lost significant number of vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, tanks, engineering equipment during one single attack. Significant losses. By the way, another important thing, that since the beginning of Ukrainian offensive operation, they weren't published even a single video how the Russians were attacking, let's say, Ukrainian soldiers, just vehicles. I'm not sure why the Russians are doing this. Maybe they don't want to publish videos with casualties, but we have lots of videos with destroyed vehicles. Another important thing is that Ukrainians, as if you remember we were talking about this yesterday, the Ukrainians also tried to attack the Russians in the area of the settlement by the name of Ruskaya Konopelka. So this is the village, and today, by the morning more precisely of the 7th of February, we received lots of geolocations exactly from this road, but most likely the Ukrainians haven't managed to cross the railways. So as you can see, the main number of geolocations are taking place, let's call it like on the Ukrainian side of the railways. In this video we can see how the Ukrainian convoy managed to reach the railways, but the Ukrainians were completely destroyed without crossing the railways themselves. So based on this and based on these geolocations from the same road, we can make a conclusion that most likely the Ukrainians were trying to attack in the direction of Ruskaya Konopelka, but Ukrainian vehicles were damaged and destroyed. So maybe today we're going to receive additional updates, but as for now, this is the situation on the ground. And once again, and this is very important, the Russians are saying that Ukrainians were completely defeated, that Ukrainians suffered significant losses. And telling the truth, I expected and I was waiting that today, on the 7th of February, in the morning on the 7th of February, the Ukrainians will repeat their offensive operation. But as I see, let's say by the 12 p.m. of Ukrainian time, the Ukrainians didn't start anything. So I'm not even sure whether the Ukrainians are planning to do this or not. Anyway, the sources are saying that during the previous night, the Russian intelligence reported that during the previous night, the Ukrainians continue redeployment of forces, tanks, vehicles from Sumy region in the direction of the city of Suja. And there might be two purposes. The first one, the Ukrainians are still plan to continue offensive operation, or the Ukrainians were trying to replace losses they suffered during the previous offensive operation, with the purpose not to allow the Russians to counterattack and basically to be defeated in the entire Suja direction as a result of Russian counteroffensive. Also from the same area, we got another important update that is coming from the area of Sverdlikova. Today, different pro-Russian sources reported that as a result of offensive operation, the armed forces of Russian Federation managed to establish complete control over these fields, tree lines, and the fortifications. So as you can see, the settlement of Sverdlika is already semi-encircled. So this situation, we are waiting what is going to be today during the 7th of February. I'm not sure that Ukrainians are planning to start another offensive operation. Yesterday they suffered significant losses, and telling the truth, it's already late. It's too late to begin offensive somewhere at 1 or 2 p.m. of Ukrainian time. If you want to begin offensive, you need to start this as early as possible, because the daylight is very short and Ukrainians will not have enough of time to cross significant distances and to dig in deeper. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk direction. Today we got also several important updates. If you remember, yesterday we discussed that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, most likely managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Figolivka. We came to this conclusion based on this video that was published by the Ukrainian side. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were attacking Russian units and soldiers on the territory of the northern part of the settlement with FPV drones. Based on this video, most of the mappers have adjusted their maps in Russian favor. This is the situation, let's call it like by the end of the 5th of February. This is the situation by the end of the 6th of February. And according to different mappers, by the beginning of the 7th of February, the Russians also managed to take under control this road. So now the Russians have not just this village, but also logistic between Dvorichna and this village itself. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pakrovsk direction, more precisely in the area of Andreevka fortified area. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. And telling the truth, according to updates and according to geolocations we received from this area, we can make a conclusion that Ukrainian defense in the northeastern and in the eastern part of Andreevka collapsed completely. For example, this is the map that you can see in front of your screen, is the situation by the end of the 4th of February. And somewhere at this period of time, the Russians began their final, let's say, offensive operation. For example, by the end of the 5th of February, the Russians managed to take under control the eastern part of the settlement. By the end of the 6th of February, the Russians managed to break through the central part of Andreevka and to dig in deeper between and to cut the town into parts. And by the beginning of the 7th of February, the Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their positions in the central part of the settlement. Currently, if we calculate the distance between the northern and the southern part, the distance between the settlement of Andreevka and the Russian positions in the vicinity of the settlement of Constantinople is already less than 4 kilometers. Obviously, this is already complete FPV, artillery, and maybe even sometimes physical control by sabotage and reconnaissance group over the main supply road N15. Obviously, now we can start talking about Ulakli cauldron, and most likely several hundreds of Ukrainians would be caught in cauldron in this area. And obviously, the Ukrainians will have no possibilities to evacuate their vehicles or something like this. Now let's discuss the situation, political updates. We got a lot of very important statements. According to information we have, Ukraine received F-16 from Netherlands. This was reported by the Ukraine Ministry of Defense. The quantity was not specified. I'll remind you that yesterday the first French Mirage 2000 fighter also arrived. When talking about Mirage 2000, the Russians made very important and interesting statement. The Russians stated that if this Mirage is being destroyed, Russians will pay significant reward. Russian patrons announced 1 million reward for Mirage 2000. Not $1 million, but 1 million of Russian rubles. It's of course less. So this is the situation. Another important statements about Russian-Ukraine conflict. According to information we have, the Trump peace plan for Ukraine is leaked. That was stated by Daily Mail. So this is the Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. Ceasefire by Issa. Trump aims to have Zelensky agree to a ceasefire by April 20, stopping Russia's advance. NATO membership. Ukraine would be barred from joining NATO under the plan. Territorial concessions. Kiev would recognize Russian sovereignty over annexed lands and withdraw troops from Kursk. Demilitarized zone. European, possibly British troops would police it. No US involvement. And the next paragraph, reconstruction. European Union assistance sought for Ukraine, estimated at 486 billion over a decade. So this is the plan, but telling the truth, I'm not sure that Russia will accept the plan because in this plan we can't see the most important paragraph. It's not about let's say joining of NATO, it's not about European Union, or it's not about let's say foreign force on the territory of Ukraine. I'm talking about Russian language, Russian church, and Russian speaking people, and I don't know, Russian political parties. It is very important for Russia not just to let's say to recognize the world recognize these territories under complete Russian control. It's not just about lifting some sanctions from Russia. It's not about, I don't know, joining NATO. It's very important for Russia to keep to have possibilities to continue fight for Ukraine in political and diplomatic spheres. It's very important for Russia to have Russian language on the territory of Ukraine as a government language. It is very important for Russians to have their church there and to continue their influence on people using this mechanism. And we see that according to Trump's plan, there is nothing about this, which means that Russia will never accept this plan, because if Russia accepts this plan, Russia will never be able to fight for Ukraine. I'm talking about the minds of Ukrainians. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.